sent to the following passage from Mr. Crowley's eloquent Salathiel: "If an ancient Roman could start from his slumber into the midst of European life, he must look with scorn on its absence of grace, elegance, and fancy; but it is in its festivity, and most of all in its banquets, that he would feel the incurable barbarism of the Gothic blood, contrasted with the fine display that made the table of the Roman noble a picture, and threw over the indulgence of appetite the colors of the imagination. With what eyes must he contemplate the tasteless and commonplace dress, the coarse attendance, the meager ornament, the want of mirth, music, and intellectual interest, the whole heavy machinery that converts the feast into the mere drudgery of devouring." Thus far the reader knows already that we dissent violently, and by looking back he will see a picture of our ancestors at dinner, in which they rehearse the very part in relation to ourselves that Mr. Crowley supposes all moderns to rehearse in relation to the Romans. But in the rest of the beautiful description, the positive, though not the comparative part, we must all concur. "The guests before me were 50 or 60 splendidly dressed men." They were in fact Titus and his staff, then occupied with the siege of Jerusalem. "Attended by a crowd of domestics, attired with scarcely less splendor, for no man thought of coming to the banquet in the robes of ordinary life. The embroidered couches, themselves striking objects, allowed the ease of position at once delightful in the relaxing climates of the South, and capable of combining with every grace of the human figure. At a slight distance, the table loaded with plate glittering under a profusion of lamps, and surrounded by couches thus covered by rich draperies, was like a central source of light radiating in broad shafts of every brilliant hue. The wealth of the patricians and their intercourse with the Greeks made them masters of the first performances of the arts. Copies of the most famous statues and groups of sculptures in the precious metals, trophies of victories, models of temples, were mingled with vases of flowers and lighted perfumes. Finally, covering and closing all, was a vast scarlet canopy, which combined the groups beneath to the eye, and threw the whole into the form that a painter would love." Mr. Crowley then goes on to insist on the intellectual embellishments of the Roman dinner, their variety, their grace, their adaptation to a festive purpose. The truth is, our English imagination, more profound than the Roman, is also more gloomy, less gay, less riante. That accounts for our want of the gorgeous trictinium, with its scarlet draperies, and for many other differences both to the eye and to the understanding. But both we and the Romans agree in the main point. We both discovered the true purpose which dinner might serve: 1. To throw the grace of intellectual enjoyment over an animal necessity; 2. To relieve and antagonize the toil of brain incident to high forms of social life. Our object has been to point the eye to this fact, to show uses imperfectly suspected in a recurring accident of life, to show a steady tendency to that consummation, by holding up, as in a mirror, to together with occasional glimpses of hidden corners in history, the corresponding revolution silently going on in a great people of antiquity. End of Section 14. Dinner, Real and Reputed, Part 4, by Thomas De Quincey. Recording by Robert Scott, July the 1st, 2007. End of Miscellaneous Essays by Thomas De Quincey.